An old joke goes something like this. Johnny had been misbehaving and was sent to his room. After a while, he emerged and informed his mother that he had thought it over, and so he then said a prayer. The mother responds, "Fine," said the pleased mother. "If you ask God to help you not misbehave, He will help you." "Oh, I didn't ask Him to help me not misbehave," said Johnny. "I asked Him to help you put up with me." Last week we studied and answered the questions, what is prayer? Is prayer important? Or how do we know prayer is important? Does God hear everyone's prayers? Whose prayers does God not hear? And whose prayers does God hear? In doing so, we also observe two exceptions that we find in Acts chapter 8 and chapter 10. Now, if you missed last week's episode, we encourage you, go find it on our YouTube channel and watch it. It'll help you in understanding this week's episode. The reason we studied about prayer last week is that people often neglect this great gift that God has given to His followers. Sometimes this neglect can be because of busyness, forgetfulness, or some other reason. However, I believe it is often because people do not have a good understanding of prayer to realize its importance, effectiveness, and power. This week, I want us to continue our study of prayer by answering the following questions. What are the answers God gives to prayer? And how does God answer prayer? I want to thank you for joining me, Guyton Montgomery, for Have a Bible Question, where we search for a Bible answer to your Bible questions. God desires that His followers communicate with Him through the avenue of prayer. He doesn't desire this as a pointless endeavor, but because He loves us and wants to answer our prayers. So what are the answers that God will give to prayers that we offer up? To answer this simply, there are three answers He can possibly give: yes, no, or wait. As always, we will look to the Scriptures to give this Bible answer to this Bible question. We have many examples recorded in the Bible where God has given the answer of no to an individual's prayer. I want to notice two of these. Let's start by considering Moses. Moses was a great leader for the children of Israel. He loved God, served Him faithfully, but like all men to walk the face of the earth, except for Jesus, he was not perfect. Numbers chapter 20, verses 10 through 12 records one of these instances. We start reading in verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, Because ye believe me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. The psalmist actually records about this event in Psalm 106, verse 32. It says here, they angered him also at the waters of strife, so that it went ill with Moses for their sakes. Verse 33 tells us, because they provoked his spirit, so that he spake unadvisedly with his lips. Moses did wrong when he spoke the words that he did, Hear now, ye rebels, must we fetch you water out of this rock? See, these words did not sanctify or set God apart in the eyes of the children of Israel. Moses' punishment was that he would not enter into the promised land of Canaan. How horrible to have led the people for so far, so long, but not to partake in the reward of the promised land. Now, we know that God's judgment is righteous, Psalm 116 and verse 5, but the answer was still no. Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 23 through 27 records for us Moses requesting from God to enter the promised land. Read with me. And I besought the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, Thou hast begun to show Thy servant Thy greatness and Thy mighty hand, for what God is there in heaven or in earth that can do according to Thy works and according to Thy mind? I pray Thee, let me go over and see the good land that is beyond Jordan, that goodly mountain in Lebanon. But the Lord was wroth with me for your sakes, and would not hear me. And the Lord said unto me, Let it suffice thee, speak no more unto me of this matter. Get thee up into the top of Pisgah, and lift up thine eyes westward, and northward, and southward, and eastward, and behold it with thine eyes, for thou shalt not go over this Jordan. God's answer to Moses was no. He did not allow him to go into the land, but he did show some compassion, allowing him to see it from Mount Pisgah. The first example of God saying no was with the great leader of the Old Testament. The second example of God saying no that we're noticed is to an individual that is a great leader of the New Testament, the Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul was a man that went from being, as he described himself, the chiefest of sinners to becoming a great servant of the Lord, leading many individuals, helping numerous congregations, and enduring great hardships and persecution for the cause of Christ. God numerous times used him and provided for his safety and care. However, this still did not mean that God would not answer with a no to one of Paul's prayers. Read with me from 2 Corinthians 12, verse 7 through 9. He says, "Unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." We really don't know what the thorn in the flesh was that kept Paul humble. If we needed to know, God would have had Paul tell us. However, did you notice that Paul said he besought or asked God 3 times to remove this? But God's answer was no, telling him that my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. In other words, it was to Paul's advantage to not be granted his prayer with a yes. God saying no to our prayers does not mean rejection. It may mean that he has something better for us. Because of faith, we should be willing to accept God's answer, whatever it may be. Stay tuned and we'll notice some Bible examples of when God says wait.
Would you like to know more about God's Word, the Bible? We would like to send you a free Bible correspondence course. You take each lesson that we mail to you and complete it at your own pace. This allows for little pressure and for God's Word to do the teaching. Upon completion, mail it back in the postage-paid envelope. You then receive the next lesson in the mail. If interested, go to cocmilestone.com or call 850-479-8878.
While sometimes God answers no to an individual's prayers, other times his answer is simply wait. Now, this can be somewhat confusing because we might think that his answer is no when really he's just waiting for a better time. Let's consider some biblical examples that we have for us when God said wait. The first we're going to notice is Job. Allow me to quickly summarize what had happened to him. Job was a faithful man of God. In fact, God would even use him as an example to Satan because Job's faith was so great. Satan's accusation was that Job was only faithful because of all that God had given him. So God allowed Satan to tempt Job by taking away those blessings. In the process of these temptations, Job lost houses, children, flocks, servants, health, and pretty much everything he had. Job was at a point that many would actually describe him as even being ruined. Job 19 verse 7 records that Job prayed to God and thought he was ignored, or perhaps the answer was no. It says, "Behold, I cry out of wrong, but I am not heard. I cry aloud, but there is no judgment." Job 30:20 is another passage where he says, "I cry unto thee, and thou dost not hear me. I stand up, and thou regardest me not." I can understand that Job felt that God was not hearing him, and in essence saying no to his prayers. However, Job would later understand that God was hearing, but the answer was just being delayed. Consider the contrast of Job's words in chapter 30, verse 20, and chapter 9, verse 17, with what he says in chapter 42, verses 1 through 6. He says, "Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not. Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes." Let's consider God's response to all these prayers. Job 42, verse 10 through 12. It says, "And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren, and all his sisters, and all that that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house, and they bemoaned him, and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses." It wasn't that God wouldn't answer Job or that he was saying no. He was saying wait. Another example that we have of God saying wait is found with the woman of Canaan. We read of this in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21, going through verse 28. It says, "Then Jesus went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, Lord. Yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. You notice Jesus could have answered her cries immediately, but he in his knowledge knew to wait for a better time. And so he would go on and be able to conduct this healing, to conduct this great miracle, but it needed to be at the right time. Another example of a petition to God being delayed is found in the idea of the souls that are beneath the altar in Revelation chapter 6, verses 9 through 10. It says here, And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? We know the time is coming for Jesus to return and deliver the church up to God. It isn't that God is not answering those prayers. He is just simply saying, wait. Remember, when the answer to prayer is delayed, there is likewise a reason. It is for our, or perhaps another person's good, or to serve a larger purpose in God's plan. That's why we need to pray in faith.
No matter what else is happening in the world, you will always find Good News Today, a proud partner of Have a Bible Question. A part of our program every week includes a question that Guyton and Troy answer for our viewers. Good News Today can be seen on many of the same television stations that air Have a Bible Question. You can also watch the program on our website, gnttv.org, or on your phone through our apps. We also have a channel on Roku and Apple TV, as well as episodes archived on YouTube. We'd love to have you join us.
When I study God's Word, it amazes me how many references there are to scientific things. But sometimes I struggle with that because I'm not always the best in science. That's why I'm thankful for Apologetics Press. They produce materials from Bibles to books to children's material that helps us as Christians to be able to understand how God's Word and science relate. I want to encourage you to go check them out at their website, apologeticspress.org. See them today. Since 1987, the Northwest Florida School of Biblical Studies has been providing college-level Bible classes tuition-free. In fact, I myself am a graduate of the school. I'm excited to announce that we are now 100% online, offering you the opportunity to utilize these courses to help you grow in your relationship with God. You can learn more so that you can prepare yourself for the next semester at nwfsbs.com.
Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing His praises, Jesus is mine.
No matter what else is happening in the world, you will always find Good News Today, a proud partner of Have a Bible Question. A part of our program every week includes a question that Guyton and Troy answer for our viewers. Good News Today can be seen on many of the same television stations that air Have a Bible Question. You can also watch the program on our website, gnttv.org, or on your phone through our apps. We also have a channel on Roku and Apple TV, as well as episodes archived on YouTube. We'd love to have you join us.
So we notice from the Bible that God sometimes answers prayers with a no, and other times He even says wait. There's still a third answer that God can and does give, and that's yes. Let's consider just a few of those examples we see in God's Word. Elijah was a prophet that we can read about in the Bible. He certainly was pleasing to God, considering he was translated into heaven so that he would not die. 2 Kings 2, 1 through 2. In 1 Kings 17, verse 21 through 22, it says, He stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Lord and said, O Lord my God, I pray thee, let this child's soul come unto him again. And the Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the soul of the child came into him again, and he revived. Clearly in this case, God used His power over creation in order to answer yes to Elijah's prayer by making the child alive again. Another example is found in 2 Kings chapter 20, verses 1 through 6. It states, In those days was Hezekiah sick unto death, and the prophet Isaiah the son of Amoz came to him and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Set thy house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. Then he turned his face to the wall and prayed unto the Lord, saying, I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I have walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore. And it came to pass, afore Isaiah was gone out into the middle court, that the word of the Lord came to him, saying, Turn again and tell Hezekiah the captain of my people, Thus saith the Lord, the God of David thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears, behold, I will heal thee. On the 3rd day thou shalt go up into the house of the Lord. And I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and the city out of the hand of the king of Assyria, and I will defend this city for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. Hezekiah did not involve self-pity when he received the news of his death. Instead, he quickly humbled and asked God through prayer, so God answered yes by extending his life. We mentioned Hannah in the last episode, but she is another example of when God answered yes to prayer. We read about this in 1 Samuel chapters 1 through 3. I encourage you to take the time to read these scriptures in their entirety. Hannah was unable to conceive a child with her husband Elkanah. She goes to the temple and prays where she is seen by Eli. In chapter 1, verse 17, she's told by Eli, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. She then had Samuel as a son. This is a great example of God answering yes. God said yes to one of Joshua's prayers when the 5 kings of the Amorites decided to attack Gibeon for forming an alliance with the children of Israel. So they cried to Israel for help. Joshua, in turn, assembled his army to fight against the 5 kings of the Amorites and their armies. God was with Joshua, but there was a setback. It was getting dark and the war wasn't over. In the heat of the battle, Joshua did a new thing by praying to God for the sun and moon to stand still. God answered the prayer by having the sun stand still in heaven and not go down for a whole day. What a powerful way for God to answer that prayer with a yes. You can read this in Joshua chapter 10. In the New Testament, Acts chapter 12, it tells us that Peter had been imprisoned for preaching about Christ. This follows Herod having killed James by the sword. We pick up reading in verse 5 and we'll go through verse 17. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made without ceasing of the church unto God for him. And when Herod would have brought him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with chains, and the keepers before the door kept the prison. And behold, the angel of the Lord came upon him, and a light shined in the prison. And he smote Peter on the side and raised him up, saying, Arise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. And the angel said unto him, Gird thyself and bind on thy sandals. And so he did. And he saith unto him, Cast thy garment about thee and follow me. And he went out and followed him, and wist not that it was true, which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. When they were passed in the first and the second ward, they came unto the iron gate that leadeth into the city, which opened to them of his own accord. And they went out and passed on through one street, and forthwith the angel departed from him. And when Peter was come to himself, he said, Now I know of a surety that the Lord has sent his angel, and hath delivered me out of the hand of Herod, and from all the expectation of the people of the Jews. And when he had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a damsel came to hearken named Rhoda. And when she knew Peter's voice, she opened not the gate for gladness, but ran in and told how Peter stood before the gate. And they said unto her, Thou art mad. But she constantly affirmed that it was even so. Then said they, it is his angel. But Peter continued knocking, and when they had opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. But he, beckoning unto them with his hand to hold their peace, declared unto them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And he said, Go, show these things unto James and to his brethren, to the brethren. And he departed and went into another place. I know that was a lengthy reading, but isn't it great to see when people turn to God in prayer, he not only has the power to answer the prayer with yes, but he is willing to answer their prayer. There are three answers that God gives to prayer: no, wait, or yes. His answer depends upon his infinite knowledge and wisdom that allows him to give the best possible answer for us. When we pray, let us always pray with faith that trusts in him to give us the best answer, whether it is the one we desired or not.
Proverbs 22:6 says, Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he shall not depart. The Milestone Church of Christ understands the importance God places upon family. Parents are given the charge to train their children and teach them about the life, God, and his love for them. We strive to help families in this through Bible classes of all ages, biblical worship services, service opportunities, and other programs for the family. Learn more at cocmilestone.com, or better yet, come visit us in person at your earliest convenience.
I want to take a moment and speak to how God answers our prayers. God will never affect the free will of man. Now let me define what I mean by free will. It is the ability to choose between options. God does not force anything upon an individual. We see this in the Garden of Eden. He did not force Adam and Eve to love him nor obey him. It was their choice to follow Satan by eating of the forbidden fruit. If God affected free will, it would make him a respecter of persons, and we know that he is not, by the words of Peter, when he stated, Of a truth I perceive that God is not a respecter of persons, Acts 10:34. And from Romans 2:11, which tells us that God is no respecter of persons. So if God does not affect the free will of man, how does he answer our prayers? The simple answer is to say through providence. The word comes from the Latin provident, and it is closely related to the Latin word providere, which means provide. In the Latin, it is broken down as pro, which means before, verdere, which means to see, so it means to see before. This is essential to understanding true providence because it requires the ability to know what will happen before it happens, which only God can truly do. The word providence expresses forethought, which rests upon foresight, conveying the idea of providential care. Now, while ultimately only God in his infinite knowledge can really carry out true providence, it's ironically used in the Bible in Acts 24:2 and is not in reference to God, but merely the idea of providing something beforehand. Providence presupposes the divine creation of the universe and God's government in and over that which he created, which is referenced in Romans 13 when it speaks that the powers that be are ordained of God. Ordained means set in order. It is important to remember that God has created man with free will, and he will not alter that in any way. Earlier in this episode, we mentioned the man Job and his prayers of frustration to God when he thought God was refusing to listen to him. God would remind Job in chapter 38 he was in charge of his creation and would control it. Not man, but control his creation. He speaks of the following which is under his control: creation in verse 4 through 7, control and government of the seas, verses 8 through 14, the bringing forth of dawn, verse 12 through 15, the springs of the sea, verse 16 through 18, verse 19 through 21, the dwelling of light, verse 22 through 24, snow and hail, rain, light, and thunder, verse 25 through 30, the heavenly bodies, verses 31 through 33. It includes the clouds and rain, verse 34 through 38. See, providence is where God, while not affecting man's free will orchestrate his creation through infinite wisdom and knowledge to bring about his will. The only thing he cannot directly control is the heart or choice of man. The Bible is filled with God's providential care. Esther and Mordecai, along with Ruth, Naomi, and Boaz are some prime examples. But one of my favorites is Joseph and his brothers. God did not cause Joseph's brothers to be jealous of him, but he did send the dreams knowing that Joseph would tell his brothers. God knew that this would cause Joseph's brothers to sell him into slavery, which would put him into Egypt. It was this that led him to being imprisoned, to encounter Pharaoh's servants, that led him to and that's Joseph, interpreting Pharaoh's dream, which led to him being second in Egypt only to Pharaoh himself. Now, with all that, it was the years of famine that led the brothers of Joseph to come into Egypt to buy grain from, you guessed it, their brother Joseph. You can read of all this from Genesis chapter 35 through chapter 45. Now, when Joseph decided to make himself known to his brothers, they were scared. Rightly so. An average person might desire vengeance, and Joseph had the power to have them killed or imprisoned. After all, that is what they had desired for him. However, Joseph was forgiving and comforted his brothers. You can read this in Genesis chapter 45, 1 through 5. I want you to notice that what he tells his brothers in verse 5. Now therefore be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. I thought it was the brothers that chose to sell him into slavery because they chose to be jealous of him. I thought it was Pharaoh that made Joseph to be second only to him. So why would Joseph say that God did send me? Because he knew that God used the knowledge of the choices of people that the choices that the people would make to bring about the result. This is the providence of God, and this is how God answers prayers.
Would you like to know more about God's Word, the Bible? We would like to send you a free Bible correspondence course. You take each lesson that we mail to you and complete it at your own pace. This allows for little pressure and for God's Word to do the teaching. Upon completion, mail it back in the postage-paid envelope. You then receive the next lesson in the mail. If interested, go to cocmilestone.com or call 850-479-8878.
I want to share the quote I gave last week that Homer Haley said in regards to prayer. Prayer should have first priority in the Christian's life because a full reception of God's bountiful blessings and a complete life in Christ depends on making prayer a vital part of life. I sincerely hope that this episode, along with last week's, will help you in your life when it comes to prayer. I pray that your prayers will not be hindered because of your life, but that you will, as a child of God, believe in the power of prayer. Have confidence that He will answer your prayer with either a yes, a no, or wait, and that His answer is what you really need. Believe in the power of prayer and God to the point that your prayer life can be described as being without ceasing or with regularity. Teach your children to pray. Pray with your spouse. Pray with your friends. And pray privately, for it is the most precious communication that you can put forth in your life.
Once I stood in the night with my head bowed low in the darkness as black as could be, and my heart